Chatty Kane here. No background music today because the production value is so limited here as I broadcast live from, as I like to call it, the Compton section of Uptown, Dallas, Texas. And I want to get more into my continuing series on America. Now, what ends up happening a lot of times when we are on the lookout for systemic racism, keeping our perceived or the way a certain narrative is put out, in pop culture. And sometimes it's what is not said as opposed to what actually is said. And this is where, you have these situations, these instances in that certain groups, feel a little bit left out. And I get it. But first and foremost, the main thing is to understand that there is I don't want to say disconnect, but there's a uniqueness to the dynamic of our matrix here. America, all right, is a nation of many people from many different backgrounds, ethnically speaking. You have the European Americans, the white Americans, as it were. You have the African Americans, and then you have those of Hispanic descent and those of Asian descent also, and those of, Pacific Island descent, that kind of a thing, where, it's, again, also a unique setup. And many times those blendings are an amalgamation of very different backgrounds, very unique different backgrounds. And in America, you combine that fact with the fact that we are a specialized society. A lot of that's part and parcel to the free enterprise system and the different skills germane to each individual culture that people bring to our great country and being citizens here. And again, to preface and to say, and to qualify that, to say, I think our nation is great, not based on the government, not based on who's in the White House. I believe it is great based on our people and the fact that we are so diverse that we really do have to work together in terms of getting things accomplished. But again, with push button publishing, Facebook, social media, and the like, people's opinions are out there and they're good and bad. And they bring to light some interesting things here in America. Now, I remember the legendary Richard Pryor, one of the, most salient, spot on things that he ever said, which was also very funny. Oftentimes the truth is, and it's pretty well known that most excellent comedians are thinkers and are smart people. And sometimes the truth, as I said previously, is very funny. Now, Richard Pryor had this bit, is a great bit, just a fan, it's classic Richard Pryor. And he talked about certain problems or whatever that are ignored, not really a big deal. But then when that problem hits white people, all of a sudden, it's an epidemic, which is just brilliant and funny. And, funny because there's a lot of truth in it. But just to go back and to, kind of reiterate what I said, in regards to the diversity of our population, ethnocentrism, things of that nature. In other words, relating things or keeping things almost confined to your own little grouping, whatever it may be. All right. Most people are going to have a tendency to focus on those things. And so in doing that, it gets back to the, well, what about me? What about us? That kind of a thing. Now, being all inclusive, I'm totally for. And I'd also like to say that when people make things about themselves, so to speak, or keep them germane to their own grouping, if you will, and something hits white people and it's an epidemic all of a sudden. Just a great line. Um, that kind of rears its head, in society. And I've got a couple of examples of it, and it's not just a white non-white thing. It's really not. It can also be a class thing. Case in point, I had noticed when I watched, or listened to one of my favorite, if not my favorite collaboration of all time, and that is Bring It On, by the Fifth Ward Boys, Ghetto Boys, and all of these other artists, right? Probably about 8 of them, okay? 8 or 9 other artists, right? And, I love the tune. I like music that kind of gives you a little bit of juice, and that certainly does. Well, I was watching a video version of it, and I just happened to stumble on this one where they kind of did a little bit of a video where guys were, they were actually, you can see the guys actually saying the lyrics in some of the spots. And at the end of the video, they did a rest in peace tribute. And literally, 33%, a third of the artists, and I'm actually, I think it's about 12 artists now that I think about it. Yes, a third of the artists who were, in their 20s at the time, when this came out, like, 1993 or whatever, that are now deceased. I thought, wow, that's this is interesting. It's certainly not a good trend. And I thought to myself, well, if this was boy bands or whomever, right? Country music artists or whatever, okay, that if this was the trend percentage-wise, in terms of the number of artists dying, there would be a little bit of an outcry. People would talk a little bit more about it. There would be, behind the music or what have you behind it. And there would be a lot more attention brought to it. And it got me thinking about how I correlated the two. I was driving in my car the other day, BMW 328i, XI drive, black on black, love that car. I had heard an ad about an upcoming documentary series or biography series on A&E. And it mentioned, they had 10 wrestlers or so that they spoke about, okay, that they were going to feature and talk about. And every other one of them was dead. Early 50s, late 40s, certainly before their time, right? And again, this is one of those things that if it was actors or, any of your wide scale groupings, okay, and entertainment reaches a lot of people. So that is a large group indeed. Not much is said about this. And that's when it kind of got me thinking that, okay, because wrestling is looked at as a joke and only, black and brown and white trash are the only ones that like it. So the mainstream doesn't really care about it. Oh, it's so ridiculous. Well, it's entertainment. Okay. And if you know the schedule that these guys keep, it's not ridiculous and it's not a joke at all. These dudes are durable, talented cats that, man, their grind is literally on par with an NFL player. Of all of the physical grinds, right, in life, in terms of entertainment, boxing, MMA come to mind, bodybuilding, that kind of thing, strongman, football, these are the more intense grinds that you have. And certainly wrestling falls into that category. But again, back to keeping an eye out in pop culture for things that, or racism in general, that you think are amiss. Now, this is not to soften the blow of the fact that certain attention is paid to certain groups en masse and other groups are left out. Okay? I thought of these things because I like to be all inclusive. But let's not be so quick to label people racist because they are ethnocentric. They're thinking about their own thing. Hey, look, man, I'm Italian and Irish. And so, anybody in those groupings, you know what I mean? I'll perk up a little bit when, they're featured or that culture is featured in prominence. Doesn't make me dislike everyone else. And I also, when I talked earlier about America, I overlooked, my producer was telling me, I overlooked indigenous peoples. And I certainly did not mean to overlook indigenous peoples here in America who, along with Black Americans, got a pretty freaking raw deal, man. But Irish and Chinese and Jews and Hispanics all did too. Again, opening your eyes to things, man. You just got to keep an open mind. Just because you miss something, once you are exposed to it, you could certainly give it some thought. That's what America's about in terms of its diversity. It's really, these diverse peoples in a specialized society, which makes one think that, well, how would there be room, for all of these different viewpoints and cultures? Well, freedom accounts for that. Freedom of speech accounts for that. And the free enterprise system, in a way, really aids this. Okay, case in point, the things culturally that certain groups, ethnic groups, let's just go with food, for example. The diversity in food and so forth and how it represents what so many ethnic groups are about. I'm Italian, but I love Tex-Mex. I just can't get enough of it. It dominates my life, in terms of, like, I eat it more than I do Italian food because Italian food is hard to make without pasta. And I'm trying to watch the carbs a little bit. Only 3.2 in here, I believe. And so this free enterprise gives a great open, wide-ass open marketplace to, the different foods. And then you have styles and music and culture and all this stuff, man. And the thing is, man, is that there's room for everybody, right? Everybody adds something to the gumbo. You know what I mean? And we can point things out. People that feel like they're overlooked can point things out, okay, with an understanding that there was no malice in overlooking them. All right. And there's a big difference between that and, outright isolating someone and calling them bad, because of their ethnic background, something that they had no choice in. And we also should understand in America, man, that there's a lot of different types of Americans, right? I'm sure there's Italian, Irish guys running around, that, just like country and are into Civil War reenactments or whatever. You know what I mean? And there's no connotation there in that. I'm just saying that different people are into different stuff and they could be from similar backgrounds. And this is another one of the things where within the Hispanic population and within the African-American population, there's a lot of diversity there. People don't see it, because of the similarities, but there's diversity in that. And if you're in that culture, Mexicans don't like to be confused with Puerto Ricans and vice versa, and Cubans and Panamanians and Dominicans and South Americans and Central Americans, on and on and on and on and on. All right. Because of the nature of our country and the way that, certain individuals that may have already been here or arrived here, the different ways in which that came to pass is really part and parcel at the core of this. There's a ton of diversity within the Black American population, a ton. But essentially what happened is they were robbed of their history. If you look at the Western history books and the records that they did keep, it is generally accepted that most Americans of African descent are from Mali, West Africa. However, it is more likely that that was simply the port of origin, okay, in terms of the transport process and all of that. Because I think that if you will pay attention to it and look at it, you see African Americans that are tall, African Americans that are short, African Americans that are big, African Americans that are small. Okay. You see different facial features with African Americans, some more Egyptian, some more Nigerian, right? But their history was robbed before they came over here. So they were kind of all lumped into one group, which created unity in some ways, and yet and still was not able to erase the undertow of the actual diversity within that population. All right. And so you take that, the diversity in our population in America in general, and apply it to that one large group of Americans, African Americans, Black Americans, okay? And just try to put yourself in that timeline, try to put yourself in that flow chart and imagine, where your head would be at if there was no real sense of history. If you looked at Europe, I said, well, geez, man, you got the Mediterranean climates, which is where my people are from. And then you've got the far north, Western Europe, Northern Europe climates, which, Ireland's where my father's people are from. And you just lumped it all together, right? They'd be like, hey, wait a minute, man. What? These people are one and the same. The dude's got reddish, brown, blonde hair and green eyes. And the chick's got, jet black hair, olive skin, and dark brown eyes. The question would immediately come after that, or the answer to the question would be, oh, well, the father's Irish, the mother's Italian. All right. Oh, well, that explains it. Well, see, when you look at idiosyncrasies, the physical appearance, manners of behavior, so forth, all these different things, and in regards to African Americans, there's this guy his people are from Nigeria. His people are from Carthage. His people are from Egypt. His people are from Mali. They're from West Africa. None of that attention is paid. Okay, so just put yourself in that and try to imagine, all right, as you go through your day, that this is something that kind of permeates its way through your existence. When we look at people's background, oftentimes, like for me, myself, being somewhat olive skinned, and certainly I was much, much, much darker when I was younger, getting outside more. My white friends, they always want to know, my white friends' parents or teachers or whatever always want to know, you have this Irish surname. Why are you so dark? Because I'm like, oh, this face, I look like a grease ball. There's no doubt about that. I'm definitely a Dago looking motherfucker. I'm definitely an Italian looking guy. So then once they're told, oh, okay, then that, then that's that and that's that. Or the fact that, I have a temper, right? I'm hot-headed. Well, it's, the Irish side or whatever. The fact that I'm passionate, that's the Italian side. There's a place to trace this back to and have an explanation. And listen, explanations, excuses, they really fall under the same heading. Okay, so you call it what you want, but there are certain characteristics attributed to certain people that there is a tracing back of a specific ancestry, history, if you will, nature of that particular culture. Okay, and hey, Black Americans were robbed of this. And so, again, man, this is not to single out anybody. This is not to pick on anybody. This is not to kiss up to anybody. This is just looking at America the way that it is in the history of our country. Okay, I mean, I just urge you to keep an open mind about shit. It can be hard. It can be harder the older that you get because you're used to things. You don't like certain things that are new in terms of society. You don't want to see change. But again, we have freedom of speech given us by the Constitution. We have freedom of thought given to us by God. Use it, people. Think about shit, man. Take into account shit. Subrogate your own fucking ego for a minute and walk a mile in another person's shoes, And look, it's all about just having a healthy respect, man, for one another. I myself believe in a meritocracy. I think a lot of Americans and a lot of human beings, for that matter, believe in a meritocracy where your standing is based on the merits that you personally bring on the result or the continued efforts that you give. Okay, we respect people who work hard. We respect people who achieve. And I think we found out that time and time again, the best way to do that is to focus and to remove any hindrances from your mind as you focus on what it is that you're doing. Racism, exclusion, being exclusionary or whatever, closed-mindedness, those are all restrictions. This is not anything new or groundbreaking. Negative thoughts, negative energy. Okay? And you can circumvent a lot of these roadblocks. Okay, you can get around a lot of these roadblocks by keeping an open mind. It also, people, will help you with your cognitive ability to solve problems by thinking things through. Think more about certain scenarios, try out more certain scenarios. You are running this thing up the flagpole, so to speak, metaphorically. Trying out more scenarios to arrive at a desired end. The best way to do this, man, is to try out a lot of different scenarios. Counterintuitive, intuitive, whatever it may be. Just think about things, people. That's all I'm saying. And again, love America. I'm an unabashed lover of this country, but that's because that's where I was born. And because all my best friends are Americans. And America, the people of America, is what makes America great. Not the government, not who's in the White House, all right? Not the police, not the military, not our international policies, not that. Although those groups, the military and the police, are made up of Americans. The great Americans at that, in most cases. But the greatness of this country is that is from the people. The core of the greatness is of the diversity, the competition, the loving of a winner, and the commitment to excellence that we have here in this country just to be able to succeed, to be able to live, to get by. All right. That's what makes America great. But again, keep your eyes and ears open. More importantly, keep your mind open, because that's where any and all things can come to pass in simulation form. Think shit through, man. That's all I can ask for. Think shit through. Treat one another with respect, okay? Until they cross that fucking line. And some motherfuckers just got to be dealt with. Just understand, man, that everybody's trying to get by just like you are. All right? And that our diversity is what makes us great. Okay? We just have to go about utilizing a better way to understand it and how it applies to everyday life for all people. Again, it's Johnny Kane. Not so much the comedy experience this time, just more of a stream of consciousness. And the second in my series on America. Thank y'all very much for coming out. Good day and God bless.